Jessie Buckley, one of her best and most intriguing actresses working today, and now also an Oscar winner. What about her? From a young woman whose sense of self begins to fracture during a surreal road trip to a sharp-tongued nurse whose cheerful smile hides something deeply unsettling. And from a grieving wife trying to escape the trauma of her past in the quiet English countryside to a new spin on a legendary literary creation. Let's get into it! Please help your favorite average movie guy get to 1,000 subscribers by subscribing right now. Breaking through on screen. War and Peace 2016. After starring in Rosamund Pilcher's Shades of Love, Jack and the Cuckoo Clock's Heart, Endeavour, The Tempest, and Branagh Theatre Live The Winter's Tale, Buckley's earliest major screen role came in this sweeping historical epic. The series transports audiences to Imperial Russia during the turmoil of the Napoleonic Wars. Against the looming threat of Napoleon Bonaparte, the story follows several aristocratic families. Buckley takes on the role of Princess Maria Bolkonskaya. Buckley brings a remarkable sensitivity to the role. Her Maria is gentle and compassionate, but beneath that softness is resilience, someone who endures hardship while holding onto her moral convictions. Amidst the large ensemble, Buckley still manages to leave a strong impression, grounding Maria's emotional journey in sincerity and vulnerability. Critics praise the adaptation for bringing Tolstoy's massive novel to life with cinematic skill and emotional clarity. Looking back, War and Peace feels like the beginning of something bigger, the first glimpse of an actress who would continue to seek out complex, deeply human characters in the years to come.
Thank you, Count Rostov.
Taboo 2017. Next, Jessie Buckley quickly moved into something much darker and stranger. The series is set in early 19th century London and follows the mysterious James Keziah Delaney, played by Tom Hardy, as he returns from Africa presumed dead. Buckley plays Lorna Bow, a woman who at first appears to simply be the widow of Delaney's father, but as the story unfolds it becomes clear that Lorna is far more complicated than that. Intelligent, guarded, and quietly determined, she is fighting for her own survival in a ruthless world where power and status dictate everything. What makes Buckley's performance so compelling is how she balances vulnerability with calculation. Lorna begins the series in a position of uncertainty, living in Delaney's house while the truth of her relationship to the family remains ambiguous. Yet Buckley never portrays her as helpless. Instead, there's always a sense that Lorna is thinking several steps ahead. The series itself was praised for its moody atmosphere, gothic tone, and Hardy's magnetic central performance. For Buckley, Taboo was an important step forward. This role allowed her to explore something more ambiguous and morally complex. Lorna Bow isn't simply good or bad, she's a survivor, and that complexity would soon become one of Buckley's defining strengths.
I've joined the League of the Damned.
Chernobyl 2019. After starring in Beats, The Last Post, The Woman in White, and Wild Rose, this appearance would introduce Buckley to a much wider global audience. The miniseries dramatizes the devastating Chernobyl disaster, one of the worst nuclear catastrophes in human history. Rather than focusing solely on the political fallout and scientific investigation, the show also explores the personal cost of that disaster, following the ordinary people whose lives were irrevocably changed. Buckley plays Lyudmila Ignatenko, the wife of firefighter Vasily Ignatenko, one of the first responders who rushed to the burning reactor without understanding the lethal radiation they were facing. Lyudmila is young, deeply in love, and completely unprepared for the nightmare that unfolds after her husband is exposed to the radiation. Buckley portrays her with heartbreaking sincerity, capturing the quiet determination of a woman who refuses to abandon the person she loves. What makes the performance so powerful is its restraint. Much of the impact comes from small moments. The series itself became a massive critical success, praised for its writing, atmosphere, and historical authenticity. It went on to win multiple awards and is widely considered one of the greatest television dramas of the decade, and Buckley was part of that success. For Buckley, Chernobyl, despite the size of her performance, was significant. It was another reminder of what she does best, finding the emotional truth inside even the largest historical events and making them feel heartbreakingly personal.
Told you I'd show you Moscow, didn't I?
Judy 2019. That same year, this performance brought her deeper into cinema. The film follows Judy Garland in 1968 as she travels to London for a series of sold-out concerts. Exhausted, financially unstable, and still haunted by decades of Hollywood pressure, Garland struggles to hold herself together while performing night after night. Buckley plays Rosalind Wilder, Garland's London tour manager. Unlike the chaotic world surrounding the store, Rosalind represents a rare sense of stability. She is professional, patient, and quietly supportive, trying to help Garland survive the grueling demands of her comeback performances. What makes Buckley's role memorable is the empathy she brings to Rosalind. She never treats Garland as just another difficult celebrity. Instead, Buckley portrays someone who genuinely recognizes both Garland's brilliance and her fragility. Critically, the film was praised for its emotional focus and especially for Zellweger's central performance. At the box office, it was the biggest film of Buckley's career so far, grossing over $45 million worldwide. For Buckley, Judy may have been a supporting role, but she leaves a lasting impression, showing that sometimes the quietest characters can carry the most humanity.
I'll have somebody look into that right away.
Strong rise within indie cinema. I'm thinking of Ending Things, 2020. After starring in Doolittle, The Courier, and Misbehavior, this film proved that Buckley could navigate some of the most intellectually challenging storytelling in modern cinema. The film is a haunting, surreal meditation on identity, memory, and regret. The story begins simple enough. A young woman travels with her boyfriend Jake to meet his parents at their remote farmhouse during a snowstorm. But as the journey unfolds, reality begins to fracture, conversations loop in strange ways, time seems unstable, and the woman herself starts to feel as though her identity is shifting. Buckley plays the young woman, though even that title becomes uncertain as the film progresses. Throughout the story, her character's name and background subtly change. Sometimes she's Lucy, sometimes Louisa, sometimes something else entirely. Buckley has to embody a character who is constantly slipping between different versions of herself, all while maintaining a sense of emotional authenticity. It's an extraordinarily demanding role. Much of the film consists of long, philosophical conversations inside a car or around a dinner table, requiring Buckley to carry dense dialogue about art, literature, and human existence without ever losing the emotional thread of the character. Buckley anchors the audience's experience. She becomes our guide through the film's shifting realities, confused, curious, and increasingly disturbed. Critics praised the film for its ambition and philosophical depth, though its abstract narrative divided audiences, including myself. But Buckley's performance was widely recognized as one of its greatest strengths, which I easily agree with. I'm thinking of Ending Things represents a turning point. It showed that Buckley wasn't just a talented performer in supporting roles, she could also lead a film operating on a completely different wavelength. It's the kind of role many actors might avoid for fear of its complexity, but for Jessie Buckley, it became another opportunity to dive headfirst into the unknown.
It's all wet.
Fargo, 2020. Next, this role allowed her to embrace something completely different, dark comedy mixed with crime drama. Inspired by the world of the original Fargo, Season 4 of this anthology series takes place in 1950s Kansas City, where rival crime syndicates, one Italian, one African American, struggle for control of the city's underworld. At the center of Buckley's storyline is Orietta Mayflower, a seemingly cheerful nurse with a deeply unsettling secret. On the surface, Orietta appears polite, energetic, and even charming, but beneath that bright exterior lies something far darker. She's manipulative, obsessive, and disturbingly fascinated with death, often inserting herself into the lives of patients in ways that quickly turn sinister. Buckley leans fully into the character's eccentricity. Her performance walks a delicate line between comedic and terrifying, capturing the strange tonal balance that defines the series. Critics widely praise her portrayal, with many describing Orietta as one of the season's most memorable characters. Buckley's exaggerated Midwestern accent, twitchy mannerisms, and unpredictable behavior made her stand out. Up until this point, many of Buckley's characters were emotionally grounded and sympathetic. Orietta Mayflower, however, allowed her to explore something far more chaotic.
Yeah, can you shoot him first so I can watch?
What?
The Lost Daughter, 2021. After starring in Romeo and Juliet, Buckley returned to something more intimate and emotionally devastating. Directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal in her directorial debut, the film explores motherhood, identity, and the complicated emotions that come with both. The story follows Lida, a university professor on vacation in Greece, played in her older years by Olivia Colman. While observing a young family on the beach, memories from her own past begin to resurface. Memories that reveal the difficult choices she once made as a young mother. Buckley portrays young Lida, living through the experiences that shaped her future. It's a role that requires emotional precision, as Buckley must embody the same character while still feeling like a distinct person at a different stage of life. She loves her children, yet feels trapped by the expectations placed upon her. Buckley captures that contradiction with remarkable honesty, showing a woman torn between devotion to her family and desperate need for independence. What makes the performance so compelling is its refusal to simplify Lida's emotions. Buckley doesn't portray her as either selfish or heroic, instead she allows the audience to see the uncomfortable truth at the center of the story. That motherhood, like any human experience, can be filled with love, frustration, guilt, and longing all at once. While it didn't fully get me, the film received widespread critical acclaim. Reviewers praised the performances, the screenplay, and Gyllenhaal's delicate direction. Buckley's work in particular was highlighted for the way it deepened the emotional layers of the film. For her performance, Buckley received a BAFTA and Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress, marking one of the most significant milestones of her career. In many ways, The Lost Daughter represents the perfect showcase for Buckley's strengths: emotionally fearless acting, moral complexity, and an ability to make deeply uncomfortable truths feel painfully human.
You can be very thoughtless. This is my doll. You can't treat her like shit.
Man, 2022. Next, Buckley stepped into one of the most unsettling and symbolic films of her career. Written and directed by Alex Garland, the film blends folk horror, psychological trauma, and surreal allegory into a story about grief and gender dynamics. The narrative follows Harper, played by Buckley, a woman who retreats to the English countryside after the traumatic death of her husband. At first, the setting appears peaceful: lush forests, stone cottages, and slow rural life, but that tranquility soon begins to unravel. Harper starts encountering strange men throughout the village, all played by Rory Kinnear, each one embodying a different, increasingly disturbing personality. Buckley's role as Harper carries the emotional weight of the entire film. She portrays a woman processing guilt, anger, and trauma while trying to reclaim a sense of control over her life. Garland's film often leans heavily into symbolism and surreal imagery, which makes Buckley's grounded performance crucial. Critics were divided on the film itself, while I found it to be plain bad. Some praised its bold symbolism and disturbing imagery, while others found its allegorical storytelling too abstract. But even among mixed reactions, Buckley's performance was widely recognized as the weak film's strongest element. Commercially, it was a disappointment, only grossing around $11 million worldwide. Man demonstrated Buckley's willingness to take risks. It proved she was more than capable of that challenge, delivering a performance that is raw, fearless, and impossible to ignore, even though in a bad film.
That is exactly why we have to get divorced. And I am going to divorce you, okay? I am.
Women Talking, 2022. That same year, Buckley moved into one of the most powerful ensemble dramas of the decade. The film tells the story of a group of women in an isolated religious colony who gather in a barn to decide their future after discovering that many of them have been victims of systemic abuse by men in their community. In summary, it is about women talking. Surprising, right? Rather than depicting the violence itself, the film focuses on the conversation that follows. The women debate three possible paths forward: do nothing, stay and fight, or leave the colony entirely. Buckley plays Maurice, one of the most emotionally complex characters in the group. She carries a deep anger shaped by years of abuse and oppression. She is outspoken, confrontational, and often challenges the more forgiving perspectives within the group. Buckley gives her a raw intensity that makes her impossible to ignore. Her performance captures someone who has been pushed beyond patience. Critically, the film was widely acclaimed for its writing, performances, and thoughtful direction. With me not being the target audience at all, it unsurprisingly didn't really move me. At the Academy Awards, it won Best Adapted Screenplay and received a nomination for Best Picture. Commercially, the film performed modestly, but it's respectably for a dialogue-driven arthouse drama, earning around $9 million worldwide. For Buckley, Women Talking represents another important step, working within a powerhouse ensemble while still delivering one of the story's most emotionally volatile performances.
Is this really how we are to decide the fates of all the women in this colony?
Wicked Little Letters, 2023. After starring in Scrooge, A Christmas Carol, and Fingernails, Buckley showed a completely different side of her talent. The film is inspired by a bizarre true story that took place in the English seaside town of Little Hampton during the 1920s. The plot revolves around a series of anonymous letters filled with outrageous profanity that begin appearing in the community, scandalizing the deeply conservative town. At the center of the mystery is Edith Swan, played by Olivia Colman, a deeply religious woman who becomes the primary target of the letters. Suspicion quickly falls on her outspoken and unconventional neighbor, Rose Gooding, played by Buckley. Rose is everything the strict town disapproves of: loud, independent, unapologetic, and unwilling to conform to polite social expectations. Buckley plays her with explosive energy, embracing the character's rebellious spirit and sharp sense of humor. What makes Buckley's performance so entertaining is her comedic timing. After years of playing emotionally intense or psychologically complex characters, here she leans fully into the chaos and absurdity of the situation. Critically, the film was praised for its performances and playful tone, particularly the chemistry between Buckley and Coleman. It was a really entertaining ride. Commercially, the film was a solid success for a British period comedy, earning around $27 million worldwide. For Buckley, Wicked Little Letters is important because it highlighted a side of her that audiences hadn't seen as often: her ability to be wildly funny.
You look like fucking Queen Victoria shoved a fucking nettle up her fucking pussy. I don't know. Becoming
an Oscar winner. Hamnet, 2025. Next, Jessie Buckley returned to emotionally rich historical storytelling. Directed by Chloe Zhao, the film tells a deeply personal story connected to one of history's most famous writers, William Shakespeare. Rather than focusing on Shakespeare himself, the story centers on his wife Agnes Hathaway, played by Buckley. The film explores the life of the family in Stratford-upon-Avon and the devastating loss of their young son Hamnet in 1596. A tragedy widely believed to have influenced Shakespeare's later writing, including the creation of Hamlet. Agnes is depicted as perceptive, intuitive, and deeply connected to the natural world around her. She carries a quiet wisdom, but also an intense emotional life, particularly when the family is confronted with unimaginable grief. Buckley brings extraordinary sensitivity to the role. Her performance focuses less on grand speeches and more on small, intimate moments, glances, gestures, and the silent weight of loss. Through these subtleties, she captures the devastating emotional ripple of losing a child while also portraying a woman trying to hold her family together. The film premiered to strong critical acclaim, with many reviewers praising Zhao's delicate direction and deeply emotional performances at its center. Buckley's work in particular was widely highlighted. She went on to sweep awards season, winning the Golden Globe, Critics' Choice Award, SAG Award, BAFTA, and the big one, the Academy Award for Best Actress. Commercially, the film has become Buckley's biggest box office success to date, grossing over $96 million worldwide. Hamnet represents another step forward, leading major prestige productions. After years of powerful supporting roles and ensemble performances, Buckley here carries the emotional weight of the entire narrative. She once again proved that some of the most powerful performances are the quietest ones, and that those can be awarded too.
You defy venom, you defy air illness, you defy the horror that stalks the land.
The Bride 2026. After starring in The Scarecrow's Wedding, Buckley steps into one of the most iconic pieces of monster mythology ever created. Directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal and their second collaboration, the film reimagines the legendary character first introduced in the classic Bride of Frankenstein. Rather than simply retelling the familiar story, this new version approaches the character from a more emotional and character-driven perspective. Set in 1930s Chicago, the film follows a scientist who attempts to create a companion for Frankenstein. But when the bride finally comes to life, played by Buckley, she begins to develop her own sense of identity, autonomy, and understanding of the world around her. Buckley's role as a bride places her at the center of the film's exploration of identity, humanity, and belonging. With its gothic atmosphere and large-scale production, the project marks one of Buckley's biggest studio films to date. Reactions so far have definitely been mixed, praising the performances by Buckley and Bill, but critiquing its many different creative directions. Pros and cons I can't really argue with, even though I found Bill to be stronger than Buckley, but with a legendary actor of that caliber, that is not a bad thing at all. Within the context of Buckley's career, The Bride represents a fascinating step forward. After years of working in intimate dramas and challenging psychological films, she now leads a somewhat large-scale genre project while still bringing the same emotional depth that has defined her work so far.
I can't remember.
And there you have it, the full career of Jessie Buckley. From her breakthrough in indie cinema to becoming an Oscar winner. Now let me ask you, what did you think of Hamnet and The Bride? Do you think she deserves her Oscar, and what is your favorite Jessie Buckley performance? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for more videos like these. I have been Dean, the average movie guy on your screen. Big thanks for watching. See you next time. Roll the credits.